I'm Thierry Livret from FoxInCloud, and today in this video I would like to show you how you can adapt your surface event code, that the code of the event that happen in the browser or in the surface of the user interface, as opposed to the code that require a server intervention. Let's see, for instance, on the FoxInCloud live tutorial online, which I remind you the URL here. We have a form called controls and events, and you can see in this form we have two boxes. The left box describes the events processed by the browser that we call surface event, and here you have the events processed by the server, by the VFP server, the VFP application with the VFP forms, just like you see on the screen. And on the left side you can see this kind of event, which are mouse leave, key press, mouse move, mouse enter. All these events are too fast to be processed on the server and require some specific attention. In this particular case, we have implemented these events by a very standard handler, which simply writes the name of the event and eventually the number of times the event is called. As you can see it here, or here we have 10 times mouse moved and 4 times key press, etc. But now we're going to see how these events can be implemented to have something very similar in the web application as you have in your desktop application. So for this, we are in the FoxInCloud Studio that you can install by going to the site and downloading the package for free. And in this studio, we are going to use the live tutorial. Again, if you're not familiar with the live tutorial, you can go to the blog post that describes the live tutorial. We also have a video describing that. So let's see what happens on the desktop. On the desktop, we have now a button called Surface Event, and we're going to see what's going on. So it's a very simple form with 4 buttons, and each of these buttons reacts to the mouse over, mouse leave by changing the color and changing the background of the button. And this is for the first aspect of these events, which is to change the display of the elements. We also have another case here where we're going to change the content. If you over this button, you will change the content of the button, which is the caption in this case. Okay, let's see how this is implemented in this form. Oh, the form is named Event Client. You can open it in your own environment if you want. And you can see that this Event Client has several buttons here, and all these buttons are based on the same class, and this class is called FIC command over, and the class is of course stored in the FIC sample class library. So they're all the same. So in desktop mode they will react the same, and in web mode we will have some specific code. As you can see here, if we go there, we can see that this button has a code, and this button has a different code, and this is what we're going to see in the rest of the videos. But let's see what happens in the class that is behind these buttons first. So the class is called FIC command over, CMD over. So let's open it. So what we do here, that is the code that executes in desktop mode. First, in the init event of the button, we add a property to where we will later store the state of the different elements that we want to change on the button when the mouse hovers it. Then if we continue, we go to mouse enter, and mouse enter, first, this is a class that was adapted by FoxInCloud. So you probably recognize these 3 lines which are added by the FoxInCloud adaptation assistant. Usually you have a return true here, but in this particular case, FoxInCloud adaptation assistant has added return false. What it means is that the server will ignore the event at runtime, and this is the default for surface event. This way, we won't send even to the server, and obviously we need some processing on the client side, which is the purpose of this video. So what we do is save the current state and change the state. Change the font bold, back color, and fore color. And that's for mouse center. And if we go to mouse leave here, then we just do the opposite. Of course, we also have a return false in this case, and we do the opposite. Okay, clear enough. So now let's go to the web version of this demo, and let's call the okay. So the server starting, as you know, which is normal. I mean, that's how it works on. Let's close this first. Okay. So we have the home page, which is perfectly normal. And what happens here is we're going to go through the surface event menu so that we have a full page with surface event. Okay, so you can see here that, for instance, if I click there or anywhere on the page, it goes to the server. As you can see here, the server will. Oh, can I do both? I don't know. Oh yeah, maybe I can. Okay, if I change the content, you can see here, if I change aspect, you can see here something working, you can see here. So this is a normal situation for standard events. But if I hover the buttons like here, nothing happens on the server because things are managed locally. So we have basically 4 ways to change the aspect of the button when the mouse hovers it. We can use JavaScript only, we can use JavaScript plus CSS, or we can use CSS only with 2 different ways of doing it. So let's first see the first easiest way, which is the closest to what you used to do with VFP, is to use JavaScript. The code is very similar to what you used to have in JavaScript, in FoxPro. So let's see the code for this particular implementation. So now we're back to the mouse center method. We will call doDefault so that the desktop code can be run even if in desktop mode. And then we will repeat this instruction WL_HTML_gen and change the value which is returned compared to what the default method that we've seen does, which is return false. In this case, we're going to return some JavaScript. Okay? And this JavaScript, we will build it here. By default, anything that any non-empty string that this method returns in this particular situation here, when this form WL_HTML_gen, this will be interpreted by the server like JavaScript to be executed when the event occurs in the browser. So how do we build this JavaScript? We are going to change the CSS of this button. The CSS instruction here is part of jQuery. And jQuery is a very popular framework that helps you deal with JavaScript and everything that changes the HTML in general. So what we do here, and we use jQuery, we call it with an argument which is the ID of the object that we're working on. And each object in FoxInCloud has a unique ID stored in its property name, as you see, WCID. And we use the text merge ability to easily write the code and make it readable. So then we call the CSS method, and we pass an object to the CSS method. This curly braces means that we're starting an object, and this object is expressed in the so-called JSON format, JSON syntax, which is JavaScript object notation. And what the CSS method expects here is an object with properties like font weight, color, background color, which are the same name of the corresponding CSS property of the object. So it's something pretty general. And so font weight, we're going to say bold, and obviously you see here that the wording, I mean, the syntax is different from FoxPro. Here we have a specific attribute for font weight, and we should say bold. We can even say bolder. We have more than 2 values for that, so that's why it's different. The color we can say white, which is a name color. We can also use the HTML colors starting with a pound sign, but here we're going to simplify that and use the name color. Also the same for the background color. As you can see here, there is a dash between background and color, which is different from FoxPro, and you say black, okay? And this is the end, and this semicolon here means the end of the instruction that starts with jQuery. So as you can see, opposite to FoxPro, a JavaScript instruction is supposed to continue on the next line unless you have a semicolon, which means the end of the instruction. And then we just return this JavaScript to FoxInCloud, so that FoxInCloud implements this handler in the object. And conversely, reversely, I would say, in the mouse sleeve method, we're going to do the exact opposite. So we're going to say CSS, and we're going to take, if we are font bold previously, we would get back to bold, otherwise we'll go to normal. And in this particular case, we will use the HTML color of this 4 color. Remember, the 4 color is what we had before the mouse over, initially in the object, and the background color we will use HTML color. Notice the text merge sign here, so that it's easy to get the value right inside the quotes here. Okay, and then we shall just return this JavaScript. This is how it works, and this works pretty good, except that, as you can see here, in Bootstrap mode, the back color reverts to the VFP gray, which conflicts with the default behavior, because by default in Bootstrap, the button is supposed to have a white background. So the first solution is not very satisfactory, and there are other aspects that you may want to see on the blog, on the blog post, which are more detailed. Okay, let's go to the second solution. The second solution uses a technique that is pretty common in many web applications. You will see that very often. This technique is to add a class to the object. As you can see here, we do almost the same. jQuery, this WCID, and we add a class which is called command over. And this class must be defined in your CSS files, and you would probably use your custom CSS file, which is called tutor.css in this case, and define this behavior in the class. In this case, you have nothing else to do. The behavior, instead of being defined in the code like we had previously, it's defined in a separate file, which is tutor.css, which you can update very easily separately from the application. And what you will do in mouse sleeve is just remove the class command over. Okay, so we can see this in action. For instance, if we use let's change it back to no. Okay, we'll keep it this way. So let's inspect this object here. So let's move this down, and you can see the object HTML here, and you can see the class. The class here doesn't have the hover class, but if we move it over, you can see it. You can see it. I can't move the mouse, unfortunately, but you can see the command hover class popping in, as you can see. This is because we use JavaScript to add a class to the button. Okay, and now if we see the CSS here that corresponds to this, you can see that we have another rule coming in saying that the font weight should be bold, the color should be white, and the background color should be black. And this is defined, and this rule is defined in tutor.css, specifically at code line 228. Okay, so this is another way to do that, which is mixture between JavaScript and CSS. So now let's explore another solution which is only CSS. And this solution here is that when we generate the HTML, when we generate the HTML for this object, we will implement the WC HTML gen method of this object or this class, whatever, but specifically it will be made this way, and we will add a CSS rule to the application, which will be defined here. So what we say here is that we want to add a rule. Let's see what a CSS rule looks like by browsing the tutor.css file for this application. And let's do that. Okay. Okay, I need to reload the stuff here. Okay, should work. Okay, works. So here are the rules. As you can see, a rule is a set of qualifier saying what kind of object you want to work on. Then you have a curly brace, which introduces a number of definitions like the border, box sizing, padding, etc. All of these definitions have an impact on how the elements that correspond to this description will look like. So all elements that match this description will have a text align left. The only thing that you need to learn is how to specify this description. And this is what is called CSS selectors. CSS selectors is a language, some kind of a syntax that allows you to address one or several elements of the page and to assign rules to these elements. Okay, so that's what we do here. We do, as we said, we just, oh sorry, I'm just not right on the right button, okay. As we said, we're defining a rule here for this WCID element for this specific element. And we can see this, you can see this rule here in the, yes, this one. We can see the rule, by the way. If we go to this form, which is called event client, let's see that, event client. Okay. Okay. And we can see here, we can see it here. Okay. The rule has been defined here. Event client, page aspect, command CSS1 hover. Notice the colon hover qualifier here, and we have a font weight bold color white, background color black. This is a rule, and because we've used this methodology here, this rule is added to the rule is added to the default CSS file for the application. And it's generated. As you can see it here, it's generated. So it's added automatically using this method. It's added to the custom CSS file of the application. Okay, is it clear enough now? Okay, you take the object and you use the hover qualifier, which is a CSS selector, meaning that this is applicable only when the object is hovered by the mouse. And then you add these rules. And after that, after the page is loaded, you have the effect that is desired. When the object is hovered, you have the desired effect. So let's see how it looks like with okay. So let's see what it looks like. Okay, so you go here and you want to see the hover. You want to see the hover classes. No, not this one. You want to see. Yeah, this one. You want to see the hover, okay? And let's see. Are we on the right button? Let me check if we are. Yeah, we're on the button here, and you can see the hover rule. Which, oh, sorry, I want to see the hover rule here. Okay, and you can see it here. Okay. You can see the rule right here that we've seen in the AW default file. you can see the rule defined here, which makes the which applies when the uh, using that shows what happens when the the hover condition is met. Okay. So now we have another solution now, which is even more simple, uh, and which is slightly different from what we've seen. And here we are using another technique, another FoxInCloud property, which is called WCSS class add. So when you use this property, you add some CSS class to the object when it's generated in HTML. And this class can be added either at design time or at runtime, like here. We add it at runtime. We do prefer add it at runtime using code, because this way you can add some more properties to the parent class without affecting your object here specifically. Okay. If you do it at design time, you need to make sure that all the inherited objects do also have this class, or whatever way you do. And if you do it this way, you're always right. Okay. So here we have added a class called command hover 2, and maybe hopefully we're going to see it in the developer tool. Here, if we go down here, we go to the button, and we can see that this button does have command hover 2 class, which is written here. And this command hover 2 class has this command hover 2 class has a hover definition this time not in a default class, but in the tutor.css, which is our custom CSS file. As you can see, the definition is the same as we've seen, except that it's in a file that we can update manually. We can modify. We do modify manually this file to update the site. So we can update this button separately just by modifying this file and uploading it to the site. So let's see what's going on in this file. Let's close that, and let's go to this custom.tutor.css and see what's going on. I don't know why this happens, but okay, let's reload the page and get here. Okay, we get the file itself, and this definition is here right in the bottom. You can see it here. Okay, and this time it was done manually. These are my initials here, because this was added manually to the file, and of course this can also be changed manually and uploaded to the server. Okay, so we've seen here the four ways to do that. Obviously, this is the most handy method, using a class that we add to the VFP object, and then this class is added to the HTML object automatically. So now we have another concern, is that we want to have things changing in the content itself. Not only the aspect, not only black and white or bold or not bold, we want to change the content itself. In this case, we have to use JavaScript. There is no other way than JavaScript to change contents, as we also have seen previously. So what do we have here? So let's see the code for this button. So in the init method, we're going to add a property to store the caption, the old caption. Then in mouse enter, what we're going to do here is we're going to use jQuery. In jQuery, we will get a reference to the object, or to the jQuery object. Then we will store the current text into a property called caption. We will create a property to this object in the browser. Everything happens here in the browser, not in FoxPro. So we will create a property and save the text of this button. You see the method here, text. This is a method that will give you the inside text. Then we're going to define a new text, which is nothing first initially, and then we will, depending on the language, which is which is stored in FoxInCloud, we will take a different caption, and this caption was defined earlier here, depending on the language. Okay. So now we can also use another syntax here. This is for reference because we also have something very similar to iCase in JavaScript. So condition, question mark, value if true, colon, value if false, and then we have another condition, question mark, colon, another condition, question mark, colon. So we can have everything, and by default take the English version, and then we use the text method to change the text this time, not only to read it. So we take the new text dot new text plus some points to make it fun. Okay, and we return this JavaScript. So this JavaScript will execute whenever in the browser, whenever we hover the button, and this is the code that we had initially in FoxPro, and this is very simple. Store the old caption and change the caption using based on the language and etc. etc. Okay. So now if we go to the mouse sleeve method, the mouse sleeve method is very similar, except that we will take also reference to the jQuery object of this element, and we will change the text to what is stored in the property caption underscore where we have stored the previous caption. Okay, and then we return this JS, and we do something very similar in FoxPro. Okay. So now you've seen that you can, of course, you need to learn some CSS, some JavaScript to make familiar, and this FoxInCloud live tutorial is at your disposal either in your IDE, as we've seen here inside the FoxPro IDE or the FoxInCloud tutorial IDE, or you can also have it online. If you go to FoxInCloud tutor test, you can see this data update. Oh, sorry. You can see. Sorry, I'm not on the right one. You can see this surface event form here, and you can see the same code. You can see everything the same online. You can browse the code. You can also, if you want, a control click here, open the code into a new something more interesting here. You can open the code into a new page and learn the code the way you want very easily here, and you have many explanations here that explain you, tells you everything you need to know about this mysterious JavaScript and CSS. I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to comment. In YouTube, you have the ability to comment. Do comment the video. Tell us what you need. Tell us what you think about that. Tell us what you think about the live tutorial. Is it a good way for you to learn FoxInCloud and to move forward for your adaptations? And we'll be happy to help you. Thank you very much, and enjoy the video. Thank you.